So welcome everybody to our digital history series called March on Milwaukee. We started it in May with an exploration of the open housing marches. In June, we were focusing on Latinx history in Milwaukee. The story of the Chapman Hall takeover was kind of the backbone of that. And this month, July, we are shifting now into a month-long discussion of food, in part because the pandemic is sort of blunted our ability to be Milwaukeeans this summer and go out to festivals and appreciate food, and which is such a big part of our culture. So we kind of wanted to celebrate conversations of food and how that can get us into other conversations of culture, of politics, of power. And we wanted to start that conversation in Walker's Point. So as you can see from our first slide here, food, culture, and fighting gentrification is the topic today, and we are joined by three spectacular people who are spectacularly qualified to have this conversation. I do just want to point out, because this is organic, the church bells here on South 27th Street, they're actually playing Lift Every Voice and Sing right now, which I bet has never happened before in the history of the South Side. So that's just an interesting thing that's happening in my backyard. Yeah. But actually, why don't we allow you guys, Marcela, Jesus, and Ursula, to introduce yourselves. Marcela, who are you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcela Garcia, better known as Chela. I have been living in Milwaukee most of my life. I was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, but, Milwaukee has been home since I was 4 years old. I currently function as Executive Director of Walker's Point Center for the Arts, where I have been there close to 4 years. I'm just very excited to be part of a conversation that really looks at, the intersections of culture, food, as well as, tough topics that have to do with, the state of our society, and just the different topics like gentrification, how that impacts the work that we do and the spaces that we occupy. So excited to be here with you all today.
All right, Jesus.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jesus. So I'm I was born and raised in Milwaukee. I'm a first generation Mexican-American kid. My parents come from the state of Jalisco. They planted their seeds here in the late 70s, and they raised us here. When I was 18, I moved away for a little bit. I was out in New York. And I came back in 2017, and I started my first little business, Mazorca Tacos. It was a little trailer right on the border of Walker's Point in the 3rd Ward. And then, fast forward to 2019, I opened up Zocalo, which is a food truck park in the heart of Walker's Point. And, I think the reason why I'm in this part of this conversation is that when people experience Zocalo, they really understand or feel the essence of what Milwaukee can be. And it's such a diverse space. And it's just like, I'd love to share how we were able to do that if we were able to do that in, 3/4 of a city block, how can we multiply this and create more so that there is more diversity throughout Milwaukee?
All right, thank you for the intro. And we're going to get more into your story just in a moment. Ursula.
Yeah, so my name is Ursula Twombly, and I immigrated to this country 45 years ago from Switzerland, and have been in Milwaukee all of my life since then. I moved into Walker's Point. My business moved into Walker's Point in 1996. They're one of the first architectural firms that moved into the area. And over the following 20 years, we saw a tremendous amount of development and construction and studies, issues around gentrification, transit-oriented development. And our firm actually was responsible for a number of the projects that have kind of spurred on the redevelopment of Walker's Point, like the Clock Shadow Building and Purple Door Ice Cream. And then I was also a board member of Walker's Point Association for, about 8 to 10 years. Excellent. So that's me.
So you guys are a perfect group for this conversation. I would, as was mentioned, we are having this conversation kind of to remind ourselves of, in part, with a focus on food, of the festivals that so define Milwaukee. Would you all mind sharing a story or a festival that you miss the most right now, or a story from a festival that you feel is kind of making 2020 incomplete for you? So
and for our attendees, please do the same. Drop some of your thoughts in the chat as well about those festivals that we're missing this year. Go ahead, Adam.
You guys got one?
I personally go to Miss State Fair when it rolls around or doesn't roll around. I mean, I just like the whole atmosphere out there. So, as well as the cream puffs and the sausages and the corn. So that's the one I'm going to miss.
For me, this is Chela. The one that I really, really miss is Indian Summer. I think it was one of the first festivals that my parents let me go with a group of friends. So it has, fun memories of just, youth and exploring the city, and especially learning more about the native cultures that, have been in this land that we now occupy, and just learning more about that. Obviously, the food is delicious there. It reminds me of the first time that I had a, Indian taco back in Allenfield Elementary School. There was one teacher that when we had a cultural fest in the gym, him and his wife would make Indian tacos. And to me, that was like a very amazing way to connect. Something that was very familiar, with my Mexican background of taco, but really looking at ways, it's not later on that you learn about how that ended up being a staple, but that's another conversation. So that's what I miss, summer, Indian summer.
For sure.
I'm definitely gonna miss Mexican Fiesta. Growing up, my mother put my siblings and I in folkloric dance groups. So, Mexican Fiesta was always that festival that we perform every day. Then, as I got older, my first job was at Mexican Fiesta working for El Rey. I was working in the bakery department, and then I moved over to like the restaurant. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of nostalgia behind Mexican Fiesta. And I don't know, I feel like recently when I attend, you can really feel like the presence of our, Latino community in Milwaukee, and the magnitude of them, and just feeling that energy all in one spot. I think it's pretty powerful. So
sure.
I guess that's what I'm gonna miss.
And to our attendees, please drop in the chat some of the festivals that you're missing out on this summer, given our current state of affairs. Adam, I'm going to cheat and say that I miss the entire vibe of the summer that the festivals create across the city. One of the things that I brag about living here in Milwaukee, and what I had no idea was the case before moving here, was, the absolute energy and richness of the festivals collectively. When I first moved here, at any given point, I could be driving around the city and bump into a festival that I didn't know was happening.
Yeah.
And that was always really cool. And then over the years, it's just been an awesome experience to know that at any given time, moment, week, day, I might bump into a festival, and you hear fireworks all summer long, every day. You could experience the cultural complexities of the city in very celebratory form and celebratory fashion. And so the vibe of the summers is something that I'm missing out on this year.
I miss old school folk fair, and like when it was downtown. We used to, go on school trips to folk fair, and like, not that it's, I don't know, like the dance performances, the marketplace, that little passport you'd have and go around. When I got into high school, I volunteered. My mom was very involved in the organization of Chinese Americans in Milwaukee, so I volunteered at the Chinese booth. And I remember, so I would work, selling at the booth. And every other booth that was selling like really hardcore cultural stuff, at the Chinese booth, we just sold anything made in China. So it was a lot of like plastic. There were some like cultural Chinese things too, but it was like bouncy balls and it was just like, and like toy laser guns and stuff. And I was like, I don't know. I felt proud to be part of that for sure. But
And obviously, we missed out on Juneteenth in terms of its the more traditional approach that the Juneteenth celebration has had here in Milwaukee. But in a very interesting way, we learned a lot more about and experienced even more about the history and richness of Juneteenth this year because of the moment. And so there's been a huge raising of the community's cultural IQ as it relates to Juneteenth in particular. And folks are dropping some pretty cool ones in. Bastille Days. We've got
just all the summer
Festival
concerts.
Of Art. We appreciate the attendees giving us the specific Street Fest, RW 24, River West 24. I got it, Tanya. Thank you. What's up, Tanya? River West 24. So yeah, keep dropping those into the chat, folks.
Ciclovia is one. All right, let's move forward.
Cool.
This is our menu for today. We're gonna talk a little definitions. We're gonna get a little bit more into Jesus's story and the story of Mazorca and Zocalo, and then we'll have a conversation about Walker's Point in general, a kind of a historical conversation, and open up for Q&A. I think that's a point Rob's already made, but if you are either on Facebook or you're in the Zoom right now, you can make a comment at any point, and we will, or a question. This doesn't need to be Q&A just at the end.
In fact, we've got some from Facebook, Adam. Washington Park Wednesdays, the Band Shell, Skyline Music Series in Cadiz Park, one of the great skyline views in the city there at Cadiz Park. So we appreciate you folks from Facebook jumping in as well.
All right, let's go to the next slide, Keisha. So we want to just offer some definitions in this conversation, which was, titled Food Culture and Fighting Gentrification. Some of these definitions here, I'm not going to read them all for you, but you can take a look. I mean, these are a lot about migration, about immigration, about who's external and internal to a neighborhood. The idea of neighborhood culture and gentrification all fit together. I would just offer a really quick definition of gentrification as being connected to extractive development. The idea of gentrification being that the folks who are in a neighborhood while it's being invested in, that the profits essentially of those investments are being taken out from the neighborhood as opposed to being put into the neighborhood. There's also, I think, associated with gentrification a lot of times, the idea of displacement. So folks who live in a place, when investment comes, can no longer afford to live there. Property tax rises, are literally sometimes the structures that they live in are destroyed to make way for new ones. So I think those are some of the core ideas around gentrification that we'll be talking about today, and kind of the elements of power within them.
It
so
really
Keisha,
gets us into the heart of the tension between gentrification and urban development and planning, right?
For sure. Absolutely. Because I think that's a point I want to emphasize too, is that investment in a neighborhood does not necessarily mean gentrification is going to happen. And I think actually all the folks today who have joined us are examples of that. So let's move to the next slide.